Hi everyone, welcome back to the CODI cast. I'm delighted to be joined today by two very impressive individuals, and they are the brains and the beauty
Thank you.
behind the hair loss prevention pill and hair growth treatment pill called the Hairy Pill, which I have to say is the best name because I just feel like it conjures up images of a pill with a wig on.
Or just a hairy pill.
Or just a very hairy pill.
Yep.
So welcome to...
confirm it is not hairy, the pill. No, just thought I would get that one out of the way.
It's been shaved.
Yes,
and waxed.
exactly. Yes.
So welcome to the studio and the CODI cast, Australian entrepreneur, Jono Stiebel.
Thank you.
And the director of the Hairy Pill and the science mind behind the Hairy Pill, Professor Rod Sinclair, or I'm going to call you Professor Rod. So welcome to the studio, guys. Woohoo!
Thank you.
Thank you.
We actually have a fake
Pleasure
applause
to be
button.
here.
I think it's the yellow one. Yeah. Look at that. Thanks, everybody. How good would that be following you around your whole life?
Excellent. Doesn't sound very COVID safe, but it's good.
We've also got canned laughter as well. So
Okay, we need that.
if you tell some terrible jokes, I'll just be like, just make them.
Push the button.
Make it sound like they're funny. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. So you've obviously created such an important product for the market because when we started working with you, I actually didn't realize how many men and women suffered from hair loss. And the good thing is you don't have to. So can you maybe just share just to get us started, some interesting facts around how many people actually struggle with hair loss?
So it's pretty much universal. There's not a single 60-year-old on the planet who's got hair like a 16-year-old. So everybody's losing hair as they get older. But the main difference from person to person is the age at which it begins. And so what we know is in the men, there's about 20% of men who start going bald in their 20s, about 30% in their 30s, 40% in their 40s. By the time you get into your 50s, it's well over 50% of men who are going bald. Same thing happens in women. So when they get into their 30s, it's around about 20% are starting to go thin. They don't go bald in the same way that men do. They just find that they're getting a lot of hair shedding when they wash it. They're finding a lot of hair in the brush when they feel their ponytail. When they tie their hair back in a ponytail, they find that they're getting the elastic around 3 times when before they used to only get it around twice. The ponytail's getting thinner, and then you can just start to see a little bit of skin. The widening of the part when you look at the hair from above.
I'm scared.
Don't be. Your hair looks great.
Thank you. The Hairy Pill. No.
Yes, exactly. 50% off discount.
Use the code Lisa50 to get
Lisa 50. Lisa 1.
to get 1% off.
Yeah, no, I would echo the same sentiments as Rod. Like with all the people that we speak to, both men and women, it's far more of an issue for females in particular than most people would think. As in with men, there's a lot of balding men around and it's been around for a long time from a sales perspective, a marketing perspective. But with the females, we certainly speak with a lot of them, and a lot of them are surprised that they're not alone, given, as Rod said, it would be over 50% of Australian women.
That's incredible. Yeah, I actually had no idea of the statistics, especially around women. And I think a lot of people just assume that like once you start losing your hair, that's it and you can't stop it.
And that's the way it used to be. And so really the breakthroughs happened relatively recently when we found ways to put a handbrake on the hair loss and actually get some hair to regrow out of the follicles. Now, it is a little bit time critical, so we can't regrow hair on someone who's completely bald. If there's no follicles there, then you're not going to get new hair. But if people catch it early and it's starting to thin, then you've got a chance to intervene. And so for the vast majority of Australian men, these days baldness is optional. So if you're going bald...
is optional. That's a good tagline.
That's right. If you're going
we should
bald,
use that.
Trademark.
That's right. But if you're going bald, it doesn't worry you. That's fine. It's okay. It's okay to be bald. It's not a disease. But if you are going bald and you don't like the look of it or the feel of it or it bothers you, then it's good to actually have some options. And one of the things that you also look at with men is that whether they're happy to go bald depends a lot on the shape of their face. So if they've got a round face, they'll often, when they start to go thin, they'll shave it and it actually looks good. And so you think about the Hollywood actors who are bald, Bruce Willis.
Jason Statham.
Yep.
The Rock.
Yep, all of those, they've got a round face, but if you've got a long face, going bald often elongates the face even more. And so that's when people shave their head and say, no, don't like that look, and that's when they're interested in pursuing some treatment.
Interesting. So how did you get into the hairy pill?
Good question. Noah, who is another director in our business, was seeing Professor. Can I just call you Rod?
Sure.
Thank you.
The rod.
The rocket over here. Noah was seeing the rocket for a couple of years, and he'd tried a lot of other things previously. So he'd been balding since his early 20s, and you could see where it was going if you looked at everybody else in his family, unfortunately. And he tried a lot of other things, and then I hadn't seen him for about 6 or 7 months because he was overseas, but he had taken, well, it wasn't called the hairy pill at that point. He was seeing Rod. He was getting obviously everything that Rod does, from the framework, the treatment, all of that. And I saw him after about 7 months at his house, and his hair looked unbelievable. And I asked him if he'd had a hair transplant, and he'd said no. And then he spoke to me about what he'd been doing and who he'd been seeing. And we thought, well, this would be an amazing opportunity to make something like this accessible for everybody. And we did a lot of research into it, and we obviously found out that what's mostly available in market is pretty old school in the way people are doing things from a technological standpoint, locking people into contracts, charging a lot of money, preying on people who aren't prepared, I suppose, to be educated, which not everybody wants to be. And then we also found out that, importantly, Rod had also patented the technology, which made him,
Professor Rod.
yes, which was clever and commercial, and made it even more so important to be part of, I suppose, the hairy pill with Rod. So Noah and I approached him, and we had long discussions about the opportunity to make something like his framework accessible to everybody in Australia for both men and women. And I suppose that was where it was born, or how it was born, a couple of years ago.
Fantastic. And why the name?
My wife actually came up with the name, the hairy pill, so I have to give all the credit to her. It took us a while, but we wanted something memorable.
Right.
So I think that
Definitely
worked.
is.
And Rod was happy with it, I think. So we went with it, and we've gone with it, and it's been good. And yeah, I think, you know, from a female perspective especially, we wanted to do something that was highly memorable in market, because there's so much out there that isn't necessarily treating hair loss specifically, but, you know, there's supplements and vitamins. And I think most of our female patients, from what I can tell, are more proactive in the things that they're doing. And we certainly wanted to stand out in that market. And then with the male side of things, I suppose the hairy pill worked in that way too. That was lucky. But yeah, you know, Ashley and Martin and Advanced Hair and some of the things like that, they're a little bit more conservative in the name. So we wanted to approach it in a more fun way as well, but with serious medicine.
Yeah, I actually really like that, because I feel like it's going to cut through the market, because like you said, everything else is almost quite, no, it's like not scientific, but it is pretty dull. And I think a lot of people are bombarded with so many marketing messages, and to cut through, you really need something that is going to be quite unique and almost a little bit crazy for people just to remember you. And so,
yeah, I think so. But it's also about, you know, having the fun side, I suppose, but also having the serious side.
yes.
And it's a fine balance between the two, and that's difficult in this situation. But we try and do that. Like, there is a little bit of fun that we have on the website, but ultimately everything is backed by science. It's backed by Professor Sinclair. Like, you'd be hard pressed to find anybody better when it comes to hair loss than this man right here. He sent us his CV when we first started working together, and I mean, it was 62 pages long.
Oh, wow.
And that was the condensed version. So I was like, are you serious? This is insane. So, you know, having the science behind it and having the fun in front is great. Having a full service model where we can provide support to people the whole time is excellent as well, because as good as it is seeing a dermatologist or seeing a GP, you really have to save up all of your questions for that consultation. But people have, you know, questions that come about all the time. So our service model kind of supports that as well. So,
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that's really great as well, because like, it's such a personal journey trying to, say, avoid hair loss or minimize hair loss. So,
And I think that's the problem as well, that it's a negative journey. So everybody's always talking about avoid this, stop that, stop hair loss. Like, it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can be a positive thing. So, you know, using the terms hair growth instead of hair loss is automatically more positive. Talking about starting a journey, talking about doing something proactive about something can feel a lot better to a lot of people who don't necessarily want to talk about it in a negative way, because I suppose it ruins self-confidence and things like that.
So I suppose the marketing is one of the aspects to it, but at the core of this is finding a treatment that actually works. And the reason why the marketing is difficult is because there's so much scepticism out there, because people have been spruiking hair loss treatments for 100 years that don't work. And it's a surprisingly complex organ, the hair follicle, and it's also quite surprising that it's taken so long for people to actually find a solution. But this was probably the result of 15, 20 years' work, trying to work out how the hairy pill works, what the ingredients are, what the biology of the hair loss is, and bringing it to a point that we actually had a technology that worked was only half the story, because you talk to men and you say, okay, we've finally found something that grows your hair. And they say, fantastic, sign me up. And then you say, well, you've got to get a referral from your doctor to come and see a specialist, and then we'll give you a prescription, you've got to take it to the pharmacy, and you've got to come back for your checkup. And they say, it's all too hard, I'd rather go bald. Now women are different. Women will walk over broken glass to get treatment for their hair loss. They won't tolerate baldness.
Absolutely. I've done crazier things to get rid of like a line on my face. Like I'll literally do anything.
But the men are lazy, and so even once you've got the technology, you've then actually got to make it accessible to them. And we can treat a lot of people in our centre. We've got about 15,000 people who we've treated in our centre, and we've educated the other dermatologists around the world, and so it's now become probably the number one go-to treatment for specialist dermatologists around the world. But getting it accessible to the people, there's still major barriers, and that's where Jono and the hairy pill and COVID, in many regards, making people understand telehealth, and it's breaking down some of the barriers to signing up to seeing a doctor online who you haven't met before. So breaking down some of those barriers, I think the time's right that people can now actually access the treatment. And what we'll see over time is that the scepticism will start to go away when this becomes more and more mainstream. So the more people that have used it, you start to see the results, you start to accept that this is a real technology. And we've seen that with laser hair removal, with a whole range of things. Now, when it first came out, people were a little bit frightened of it. They thought, this sounds too good to be true. But when these technologies survive 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, and you start to see the results, it becomes much more normalised and people will accept it. And I think that's where the opportunity of the hairy pill to not just be in East Melbourne, where we are, but to be all of Melbourne, all of Victoria, all of Australia, is really important, because there's bald men in every corner of Australia. There's women
and
losing
the world.
their hair in every corner.
That's right.
Of Australia.
Global domination. We haven't thought of that yet, but no, early days. But no, I think Rod touched on a lot of important points. Like accessibility is a massive thing. For metro people, it can be really easy to go and see a specialist. From a distance perspective, not necessarily everyone can afford to do so, which is another form of, I suppose, affordability and access, but a lot of regional people as well just don't have that option. So to be able to be treated over the phone and via effectively telehealth and consultation for something that is really self-diagnosable. Like people know when they are losing their hair, people can take photos of their hair, they can track their progress, where they're in support, and we continue to personalise the medication to each person's response, but they don't have to go in clinic to be treated for this, and you can still get fantastic results. So that's a big part of why I suppose the hairy pill works.
And it's an ethical treatment. So we're not out there to gouge and to profiteer and that's what's given the hair industry a bit of a bad name. We're out there to try and make this treatment accessible. And so we think that the power of the internet means that if we can actually get all the people who are going bald and interested in treatment, because not everybody wants treatment, but all the people who are going bald and treatment availability to the treatment, then that's actually a great outcome.
Absolutely. And it's interesting what you're talking about when you mention accessibility, because people are just on the go all the time. They're time poor. They want things to be easy. I can't even get to the dentist. I've been putting that off for ages, and I've got to go on the weekend because there's just so many things occupying my time during the week. So, I see some of the biggest brands in the world, they come from making people's lives more convenient. So I feel like this is going to be such an easy way for people to now solve what otherwise would have been quite a challenging problem, because they'd have to go in to get consultations, they might have to go in to collect their prescription or get, this is now, it's there's kind of no excuse really.
Well, that's a good selling point. There is no excuse. But, some people are always going to be nervous about these things regardless of how, I suppose, ubiquitous it all becomes from a technology standpoint, from a telehealth standpoint, from just everything that Rod alluded to, like with laser hair. But we try and make it as easy for each person. So you can be as involved or uninvolved as you want to be. You know, you can have a consultation with the doctor every 3 months if you want to. You can talk to the doctor for half an hour if you want to, or for 30 seconds. You can do a whole heap of other things with the treatment that we will recommend. We don't sell it, but we will recommend. So it's really, I put it down to people's be bothered factor, or people's, you know, that people are time poor. You know, you can be as time poor or have as much time as you want, and you can get great results from the treatment in either situation. So,
but here's an interesting thing you're saying about you haven't been to the dentist. I bet you haven't missed an appointment at the hairdresser.
That is correct.
And so people often put a high
I feel personally attacked, Professor Rod. No.
But people put a really high premium on their hair. They put a lot of effort into their hair. They think about their hair, and when they're losing it, they can be absolutely devastated. It's not necessarily rational, but people feel it beyond what you would think is its natural importance. And we also saw this in COVID, that all our patients with skin cancers, they just delayed their appointments. They put that off because that's just my health. But our hair loss patients, they didn't miss an appointment. They were coming through with masks, gloves, feeding down. They didn't want to miss an appointment because they put such a high premium on their hair. And you see that there are some people who have a low bother factor, and they just want the treatment arriving them out. And there are other people who really are particular about it. And if you go into a hairdresser and you're sitting next to someone who's arriving at that hairdresser for the first time, the amount of detail they give their hairdresser of exactly how they want their hair it's really interesting to listen to. But people really value their hair, put a high factor on it, and so you know they'll be signing up for the hairy pill before they go back to their dentist.
Yeah, look, I completely agree with that. I know that myself personally, you know, I think I remember once I went for a haircut at lunchtime and I was reading a magazine and I got a mullet, and that was like, I pretty much wanted to go home and cry. So
I think you'd look really good with a mullet. Maybe a skullet, actually. I don't know if you've seen one of those, but they're pretty impressive.
Oh, no. I feel like we need to have a photo of a skullet flash up, because I have no idea what that is, but it sounds horrific.
I think Gary Ablett Sr. had a skullet for a while.
Oh, yeah. No. Okay, he needs to be on the hairy pill.
Yeah. Well, maybe Gary Ablett Sr. and Jr. if you're out there.
Yeah. Father and son discount.
Father and son. Yeah, exactly.
Use the code Gary Ablett Senior Junior 20 to get 20%.
Geelong, 2021. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because it can have such an impact on your confidence. Like if you're someone who doesn't want to lose hair and you start to, like I think, like you were saying, it's like you'd almost try anything to solve that problem.
Yeah, and I think that's the good part of the program as well. You know, you're not going to be caught out. Some people are nervous to actually go and see a doctor in case they see someone. Like we've spoken to people on the phone who have said, I really like the fact that nobody knows that I'm on this. You know, my wife doesn't know I'm on this. It gets sent to my work or it gets sent to my PO box, or, you know, it can be as discreet or as open as you want it to be, which is important because everybody, I suppose, approaches their hair loss differently.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of almost like mental health. I wonder if people ever feel comfortable, just because I think more and more people are getting comfortable talking about mental health, but I wonder if more and more people get comfortable going, hey, I actually struggle with hair loss. Because then it might open up the conversation more to then have someone go, oh, I'm actually on the hairy pill. Like that's really helped me. And so hopefully I feel like a lot of people can feel comfortable talking about it, because like you said, the stats show everyone's going through it. Like I look at my vacuum cleaner all the time. I'm like, shit, how do I even have hair left? It's surprising.
But you talk to pharmacists and they'll tell you that they lock up the minoxidil or the hair loss treatments they sell in the pharmacy because people pinch them. They don't want to take it. They don't want to even take it to the counter.
Oh my God!
And admit that they're concerned about their hair loss and they're seeking treatment. A lot of people really value their privacy in it. So having a subscription service is really an important aspect to it.
Fantastic. So the boxes don't have the hairy pill on the outside.
No, I mean, it can be, as you know, it can be as discreet or non-discreet as you want it to be, and that's an important point for you know, we've got people who are really excited by it and they shout it from the rooftops, and that's awesome. But equally, you know, every single person is still a patient, and it's still private information, and we treat it as such. So we love when people are really excited about it, and we do have a lot of people who say like, this was really getting me down, you know, mentally, especially I think women, because it's not I don't want to say the wrong thing, but it's not acceptable in society for a female to walk around the street with like a clearly balding head. Like people look, People stare.
It's acceptable. It's not normalised.
Not normalised. Sorry. Thank you for correcting me there. I apologise in case I offended anybody.
But for men, it's quite normal.
Yeah, completely normal. So we, with the, I suppose from a mental standpoint or a mental health standpoint, a lot of females who are suffering specifically because of that. And then also younger men tend to more so than older men. I think it's more like, men in their early 20s, even 18, 19-year-olds and things like that, they're really, they call up and they're pretty desperate about what's happening because they see what's happening around them with their parents and their uncles and their grandparents, and they're just like, I don't want this to happen to me. So,
but I've already seen a huge change. I've been doing this for 25 years now, and when I first started, there was a lot of resistance in the medical profession saying this is not a medical problem, this is not a concern, and yet on the same token, they were treating warts and bunions, as though they were more important conditions. But what we're starting to see is more and more people are accessing the treatment, it's becoming more normalised, there are actually treatments that work, then I think all those barriers break down. I think it's going to go the way of braces. When I was a kid, braces were really exceptional. You had to be really, really rich to get braces, and nowadays there's very low tolerance of crooked teeth. Virtually everybody's getting braces if they've got crooked teeth because the treatments are much more affordable, they work, and so the world just moves on. I think that's what's going to happen with baldness. I think the world will move on, and that those people who don't want to go bald won't go bald.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's actually quite interesting idea, because I think most people just accepted that that's just aging, like getting wrinkles, but there's things like Botox now, so you don't need to. So yeah, I guess you're right.
There's absolutely no reason why this just won't continue to improve and become normalised in the community, that baldness is not compulsory, it's optional. If you don't want to go bald, don't go bald.
Good tagline. There you go. Used again. It's like you guys need to definitely work that into the marketing angle. So what sort of innovations have happened around hair loss? Because I feel like there were those dodgy plugs once upon a time, like that maybe John Travolta had. Don't sue me, John Travolta. Maybe cut that out. So that's what I kind of think of when I originally think of like hair loss technology, which I think is actually quite amazing that you can get plugs in your hair that, I don't know, they wash out. No, they can just, I guess you can wash it like not.
man.
So that's hair transplantation surgery, and that's actually still done, but it's improved. And so we don't do plugs anymore. We do it one hair by one hair.
Wow.
And so it's torturous. It takes about 8 to 10 hours to do a transplant. But you sit there taking one hair out of the back and popping it in the front. And this goes on with a team of about 5 or 6 people in the operating theatre. And then when the hairs regrow, so 5 days later you can't tell they've had a procedure or had any surgery. And then the hairs that have been replanted take 6 to 12 months to grow. So what happens is they recover from the procedure, a week later they're back at work, everything's normal, and then the hairs just slowly start to miraculously appear 6, 12 months later. And so most people don't even know they've had a transplant. So, I get patients coming in, they say, my brother's just come up to me and said, what have you done to your hair? I've gone bald and you haven't. What's going on? And he said, I had a hair transplant 2 years ago. People don't even realise, they don't notice it, because we're doing lots of transplants in Melbourne these days, but it's not a thing anymore because you don't see the plugs. You don't realise that they've had it done. It's a bit like wigs. The only wigs you see are the bad wigs. And so it's the only
Donald Trump.
That's right.
He needs some hairy pill.
Yes, he's definitely listening to this podcast.
Hi, Donald.
Make
use
America
Donald.
great again.
Use Donald 10 to get 10% off.
Yes.
Oh, excellent. I feel like we could talk about hair loss all day, but I know that you probably have hair to save. So
that's right.
Yep. So I'm going to finish off with our final segment, which is 5 quick questions.
From us to you?
Hopefully not. Hopefully don't ask me any questions. I don't know anything.
About hair loss specifically? I won't ask you. What is your favourite colour?
Blue.
Thank you.
I always actually wonder what colour therapy is. I think favourite colour must say a lot about your personality.
Mine is blue.
Oh, really? Is it? Yeah. And yours? Green.
Well, I'm wearing green.
Yeah,
but this is really digging deep here, guys. Tune in next week when we find out Rod's favourite food.
Green?
Red.
Red?
Well, that's aggressive, Rod.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's passionate, though.
I've misjudged you.
really misjudge you. We're going to be breaking up after this segment. You're a red. Okay, so firstly, I'll go to you, Professor Rod. So when did you want to know that you wanted to work down this path? Because were you a kid and thought, oh, this is what I want to do when I grow up? Because I sort of imagine kids going, I want to be like an astronaut or a tax accountant.
I could see that with Rod. Little 6-year-old Rod, I want to be a dermatologist.
It actually came late to me. So I started my training in dermatology in Oxford in England, and where I was working, it was really the centre of hair biology, and the senior dermatologist I was working with was one of the doyens, and he's famous for having described so many of the hair loss diseases. So there's hundreds of different things that can make your hair fall out, and he's described so many of them, and he was a great observer, great understander of biology, and he got me thinking about the intricacies, the complexity of hair growth, and then I learned how important it was. And it was interesting, it was at a time when nobody else paid any attention to it in the medical sphere. There were certainly cosmetic houses that were interested in it, but it wasn't considered a serious medical topic. And so this is back in the late 1980s, early 1990s, and having been introduced to the hair follicle, I was hooked. It was it's just an amazing organ, so much complexity.
Good answer. The hair follicle.
Addicted.
I feel like that could be some merch. Hashtag addicted to the hair follicle. Okay, fantastic. So Jono.
Yes.
If you could have claimed to invent anything in the world, what would it be? So it's an existing product that exists now or service, but if you could have claimed that you invented it, what would it be?
That's a difficult one. And it has to exist, did you say already?
Yes.
Oh, the Hills Hoist, without a doubt.
Hills?
No, Australian, isn't it? Australian one? Yeah. Wi-Fi as well, Australian. I think Wi-Fi is a pretty good one. I'll take Wi-Fi. Yeah.
I'll say Wi-Fi for 10 points.
I'll say Wi-Fi for 10 points. I think that was an Australian invention, and I'll say Wi-Fi. Next question, thank you.
Lock in Wi-Fi.
Lock in C Wi-Fi. When in doubt, go C. There you go.
Good one, Wi-Fi. It's changed a lot of lives.
It has.
The internet as well.
Yeah. Oh, I should have said that one.
Or the hairy pill, but you guys have done that already.
The hairy pill.
Wi-Fi is a good one. We were actually just talking about marketing to Gen Z and millennials, and I was talking to one of them was a Gen Z, and I was talking about how I couldn't, I was around when there was no internet, and I think that I know. Like,
I actually said that the other day because I was Googling something and I was like, what did we do before that? I can't remember. I think I looked up, before internet, before dial-up, before Google. I think it was Encyclopedia Britannica on CD-ROM.
Yes.
Wasn't it?
Or the actual book.
Yeah, or the book on the shelf. Yeah.
Like you're like D for duck, and you're like trying to do your school project. You're like, well, everything I need to know about ducks is in this book. I was going to pretty much just rip off the Encyclopedia Britannica, but totally different world we live in now. So yeah. Okay, so actually I'm going to finish on this question for both of you. So I'll go to you first, Professor Rod. If you could give your 20-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think it's enjoy the journey, because you spend so much time worrying about what the future's going to have. If you just knew it was all going to work out okay in the end, then you'd probably have a lot more fun along the way and spend a lot less anxiety. So I think be in the moment.
Yeah, fantastic one. And Jono?
Invest in Bitcoin.
That's a fantastic one.
That's a good one, right?
That is a fantastic one.
Yeah. No, it's on a serious note.
It is invest in Bitcoin.
On a serious note, that is exactly what 20-year-old me should do. Well, that was 15 years back. I was pretty advanced 20-year-old. So no, I think it would be, definitely what Rod said, enjoy. I think that the time I had between the age of 20 and 25 before life's responsibilities got in the way, like the proper responsibilities of families and businesses and kids and all the wonderful things, I too would say something along those lines, like just really enjoy that time because it's short-lived. And there's more serious things coming.
So just party heaps.
Yes, just party heaps.
And don't even worry about losing your hair because
and exactly right, that there is a solution. So don't worry about your hair.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much to both of you for coming in today. It's look, fantastic way to end the week. Really enjoyed learning more about
Thank you for having us.
the journey. And so, yes, if you want to find out more about the hairy pill, we're going to put all of the links in the show notes. And if you use the code Lisa0, you'll get nothing off your code.
Fantastic. Exactly
It would
right.
be an error message.
Yes, there will be an error. No, we will we will create something.
But in all seriousness, amazing work by both of you. I think it's definitely a product that's going to help a lot of people. And like you were saying, that convenience means that even the busiest person can get their hair, or like you said, it's optional now to lose your hair, but even the busiest person can now find a solution. Even the person who wants to be private can find a solution. So yeah, I think it's an amazing product that you've created. So well done to both
Thank
of
you.
you.
I'd say well done to Rod as well. I mean, he came up with it. So
Well done.
good work, Rod.
Professor Rod.
Professor Rod. And also I should shout out to Noah Rose, who is another director in our business partner extraordinaire, and also to my wife, Maggie, who has helped a lot with everything and continues to help. I love you so much.
Oh, you're a smart man, aren't
That was
you?
good, wasn't it? Happy
Yeah.
Mother's Day. Yes, get it all in. Yeah.
So you don't have to get her a present now.
No.
Yeah,
Rod,
I did a
do you want
shout
to say
out
something to your wife?
It's like I did a shout out to you on a podcast that's priceless.
Yeah, check out the podcast.
Yeah. We need to get it out quickly before
We have to
Mother's
get it
Day,
out.
guys.
No, if she checks it out, there'll be a listener, so it'll be perfect.
Happy listening to us. Yeah, one listener. Woohoo!
Come on.
But thank you so much, guys.
Thank you for having us.
All the best.
Thank you.
Awesome, thanks.